This interview of our Today's Campus Innovation Interview Series is brought to you by Six Sigma Management Institute. Visit sixsigmamindpro.com to learn more about MindPro, the online Lean Six Sigma training system developed by the co-creator of Six Sigma, Dr. Michael J. Harry. Welcome everyone, my name is Kirsten Winkler, I'm the Innovation Editor over here at Today's Campus, and time for another interview in our innovation series. Today's interview will be centered around interesting, maybe disruptive things going on in the textbook space. We are going to talk about what can be done different, maybe some cost-saving things as well. And therefore, I'm very happy to introduce you to my guest, Scott Hasbrouck. He is the CEO of a very recent startup called Ginkgotree. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
So maybe to introduce our audience a little bit into what you are doing. As I mentioned in the little introduction, you are in the, well, let's say roughly textbook space, although you are speaking about course packs rather than really textbooks, maybe digital textbooks. So just to sort of know where to put Ginkgotree as a startup, what are you actually up to?
So we're meant to be a complete textbook replacement. Now, whatever you want to call that, if you want to call it an e-textbook or a digital textbook or a course pack, the idea is to have one bundle of resources that's meant to be all of your course materials for your curriculum as an instructor or a faculty. So the way we do that is we let you bring in to our web app, which is completely device agnostic, resources from anywhere, whether it be a video from, 100 different websites, Khan Academy or YouTube or Vimeo, or if it's a PDF of a journal article you have on your computer, or even a book on your desk. So the way that works is we have a book scanning machine and we offer free book scanning service. We do digitizing and OCR. One of our concerns is that there's not a lot of availability of DRM-free ebooks out there. So we just wipe that clean and handle it ourselves and scan the books for you and OCR them. It's very high quality. And then we also offer in-house copyright clearance right in our app. So you don't have to, being a faculty, you don't have to worry about going through any site licenses or anything with your university. You can license any work page by page for your students. Most licensing is about 15 cents per page, and it works anywhere in the world. It's not just the United States. So whatever you want to call that end product, it's meant to be a textbook replacement. So
right.
Yeah, we call it a dream curriculum.
So that's of course a very big value proposition, a dream or dream curriculum. Let's say for our audience, I think as they are in faculties or maybe they are professors, I think pretty down to earth, although dreaming is of course always great. What is sort of the value here? Does it for both sides, students and professors maybe, is it more that you sort of sell them on they can use the content they really want compared with a traditional publisher where you get the textbook, may it be digital or still in dead wood, so paper format, and therefore you can really take the elements you want to. Is it the cost-saving factor? What's most convincing for, let's say, the existing users you already have?
Yeah, so we have obviously two major value propositions that you've already named. One is the idea that you're not locked down anymore to a textbook. You can make a textbook very easily and very quickly from any resource you want. And the idea is that in the long run that'll save you more time because you don't have to have students jumping all over the textbook. It'll help your students out The other value proposition that's tied into that is we're offering student analytics and simple, quiz metrics and things of that sort. So you can actually know as the instructor if, which resources your students use the most and which they find the most helpful. So the other value proposition, of course, is that textbooks typically cost a lot of money, an enormous amount of money, and most classes don't cover an entire textbook. We're finding with our initial faculty that have signed up, they maybe use 30% of the textbook, sometimes 50%. The fact that the students can buy that page by page is an enormous cost savings. And also it opens doors for being able to replace most textbook material with open source stuff. The problem previously is that, yes, there's a lot of open source or public domain content available, but I still need to have my students buy a textbook regardless because there's still, these 2 chapters that I just haven't found a good solution for. So we solved that in saying, well, you can still include those 2 chapters for maybe $8 and then build the rest of your course pack with public domain or journal articles or open source stuff. So those are the 2 value propositions. Initially, we thought the biggest attraction was going to be the custom content, but we're actually finding faculty are very conscious to saving their students money. Most of the emails we're getting are actually naming that as the first priority. And we're finding most of the course packs will end up costing their students maybe $30 to $50 versus, $200 or more. So so it's going well, and that's the feedback we're hearing. It's great news because it seems like our 2 value propositions are working. So
definitely, that's great news. It would be interesting, I think, for our audience as faculty. What's it like? Usually you are somewhat tied to a publisher. How did you start off as a startup? Do you have publisher relations, or is it if I am a teacher, professor, or let's say educator in general, and you were talking about open source content, open educational resources, so that's of course a big topic, and people are very interested in that. But how do I get started? Do I have to search myself? How do I make it if my faculty has somewhat of a relationship deal with a publisher, and don't you get in trouble when we are talking of, contracts, digital rights management, and all that stuff?
So we don't personally have any relationships with any publishers. As a startup, we obviously went through a period of several pivots and figuring out which idea we should tackle. And through that process, we did talk to several publishers and found that the discussions didn't really lead anywhere. The way we're able to do this and license, all of this copyrighted material legally is through an organization called the Copyright Clearance Center. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but so they have all of these prearranged licensing deals with major publishers. They cover the large majority of printed material that's available globally. And so we have a partnership with them, and we're using their agreements and their resources. They have a huge legal team, and they're much more apt at working out these deals than we are. As far as the professors are concerned, it's really up to them what they want to use. So most professors are coming to us and saying, I typically use this textbook, and they of course know which chapters they use the most. So it takes about 2 seconds to search for the textbook with the title or the ISBN, and then you just specify the page ranges. For alternative materials, we're actually just offering to help with that. We have a huge list of resources that we've researched and compiled that, we're open to, researching open source materials. We've already done it with several professors so far that have signed up and said, you can probably replace this textbook with this, public domain work or this Creative Commons works, or at least most of this textbook. So far the feedback on that's been very good. We're able to offer that because we're small and agile, and I think we'll likely be able to continue offering that in the future, even as we grow, because the fact is we can because we're used to where all these resources are, we're able to search for them much quicker than someone who might not be familiar with it. Eventually, probably in the next semester, we're going to be building a searchable database right within the app, so you could just type in chemistry, for example, and then or analytical chemistry or something even very specific, and we can say, okay, we have all of these videos that we're aware of that you could use. We have, these certain public domain text works available for use that you can use. But in the meantime, since we haven't developed that, we're just offering a one-on-one email or Skype service to, try to maybe do some free consulting for our first users to say, these are the resources we think would help. Let us know what you think, and we'll even put them in your course pack for you and see what you think about that.
Well, that sounds great. Although I hope that success won't kill you. I mean, being currently, I imagine, a relatively small team, and really offering this one-on-one service is, of course, great for the educator side and also the student side then eventually. How do you manage? As you pointed out, you have started with one faculty, I think, but you are both in the K-12 as well as higher ed space. What was it like to get your, let's say, foot in the door? Where was it easier? Because K-12 educators, teachers are already somewhat used to Khan Academy with all the flipped classroom model and so on, with all the, emergent criticism and maybe even in some aspects rightfully so. Or as there's a lot of things also happening in higher education, the whole MOOCs and so on, are both as equally attractive, or is one market, let's say, easier for you to target?
I think initially the higher education market is actually easier, for the reason that our first users mostly are individual professors who have almost complete freedom over the course materials, and it's completely up to them what they do. So whereas an entire institution or an educator at a K-12 school, that I think would be more like a 12-month-long sales cycle to bring them on board. So the initial attraction, I'd say, is probably about 70% higher ed, maybe more like even 80%. And the majority of that, probably 80% of that, are individual professors that are reaching out to us and signing up. The rest of it is mostly, librarians or, instructional designers that are offering, to offer this as a solution to their faculty at their schools. So the K-12, I think it's going to be a good thing in the future, but we're certainly having those discussions with people that have emailed us. But the main thing we're focusing on now, because we are bootstrapped, is getting a critical mass of users by this upcoming spring semester in January. It looks like we've got that. We have over 100 individual faculty signed up, and we just launched a couple weeks ago, and we've really only got minimal press. So I think it's a really good sign. The main thing that we're focused on right now is higher education. Even though, yes, K-12 is generally more aware of things like Khan Academy and stuff like that, but what we're finding is professors who aren't aware of these things, once we email them and say, "Hey, have you seen this before?" They're sort of amazed by it and didn't really know it existed. So,
is there certain subject matters that are predestined to be or for you to develop the first professor Ginkgotree relationships, or is it really throughout all subjects?
It seems like it's really throughout all. We're seeing slightly more humanities and philosophies and literature professors coming on board, I think because it would be more natural for them to want to teach from a selection of small, short works than from, trying to settle on one anthology to make their students purchase. So their ideal solution would be to have selections from 12 different books, which we make that very, very easy to do and very cost effective. That's the real sweet spot in the system. I think it works well also for the soft and hard sciences if you're willing to take a bit more time in trying to seek out the resources that could replace that $200 science textbook. But most literature and humanity professors already have a list of, paperback books that are $15 a piece that they would like to have their students purchase. But, it'd be crazy to ask their students to buy 12 of those. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the one area that we're seeing a bit more interest in.
Okay, that's great. So from the startup perspective then, what are the next steps for you? You were talking about getting this first initial badge traction, and I think for us in higher education, innovation is of course great. On the other hand, professors also like reliability. So let's say in terms of when they decide on using a service or even a whole faculty, that this service is also going to be around in, let's say, we are in fast living times, but let's say in 5 years. So what's next for you as a startup? Is it a round, seed round? Are you thinking of going in one of the various incubator or accelerator programs? How do you imagine your next months and then growing and building or continue building your startup Ginkgotree?
Well, the next step, I think, is going to be impressing our first users as much as possible. We really want to aim at having word of mouth be our main marketing solution. Because we are bootstrapped and agile, we really are very efficient. We don't need that many users to be sustainable, so that's the good news. For that reason, we haven't sought funding. It's a huge process to do that, to try to for me, it would be almost a full-time job, and so I'd be torn away from user feedback and all the emails I send every day, and actually getting to be involved writing the code myself, which I think is important as a founder. So in the future, I think we'd certainly be open to that if it seemed like we could prove that we were tractionable and profitable, which I definitely think we will be, because the nice thing about higher education course materials is that it's a huge market and no one's really disrupted it. I mean, textbooks cost an enormous amount of money, so we can still make a huge profit on saving, even when we're saving students 60 or 70% of their normal textbook expense. So that's the one huge advantage that we found. We're going to keep pursuing that, and that question has come up before. Are you going to be around 2 years down the road? And that's obviously a very valid concern. I mean, if I were in a professor's shoes, I'd be wondering the same thing. So, obviously I can sit here and tell you, of course we're going to be around, but I mean, I very much believe that we will be, for the reasons that we've, on a very little amount of traffic we've driven to our site, we've seen a huge response, and the fact that we really don't need a huge user base to become sustainable. So, like I said, we've already got that. We will be around this January. We will be around for the following years. And I see no reason that as we're able to advertise to a larger market base, that they're not going to see the same thing that the initial visitors to our site saw in our value. So hopefully that answers your question. But
sure. So I think that talk might have set this initial spark of getting more interested in Ginkgotree, at least among some of our audience. And as you said, at the moment you are still relatively small, although you are seeing good traction, good acceptance. How is then the best, let's say, way to engage with you, to learn more, maybe get in touch and sort of ask you the question that really concern a professor, and where should they go?
Yeah, so the first thing is to visit our website at ginkgotree.com. We have a pretty good description of how everything works, and all of our transparent pricing and everything is on there. We also have some information we can email you. You can reach out to me, Scott at ginkgotree.com. I'll email you back same day probably. And, because we are small and because we're focusing on a focused user base, any one of us are able to email back probably same day with any questions. And like I said, we're happy to offer the free course pack consulting to anyone that wants to sign up. And, we are a team of, 5 people, but we're here. So visit our site, email us, or hit us up on Twitter. Any way you can find us, I promise we'll respond very quickly.
Excellent. So, Scott, thank you so much. That was a very nice talk. Very interesting sort of space you are into, or you figured out for yourself. And I wish you the best of success for the months to come. Many more users and traction, and of course revenue.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.